all duking it out to find new records. During this time, people started tracking records in progress more thoroughly than before. After all, with faster searches come more islands. Arch, for example, would end up amassing a list of over 13,000 7 million block islands, which was used extensively for statistics and data. This huge influx of results from numerous people was a driving factor behind the improvements during this time, but that 9.20 was going to prove pesky to beat, so the first new finds came from the large biomes category. On December 4th, a record was broken. Actually, 2 records were broken, but not the 2 you might be thinking of, large and small biomes. I had found a new large biomes record, an absurd 152.1 million block island, shooting all the way past the 140 and 150 million barriers. But this island broke a second record, for the biggest ever jump in island size. The jump Andrew's 9.20 million island had made was a jump of 1.22 million blocks. My jump, from Andrew's 131.9 to a 152.1, was, when scaled down to small biomes, a 1.26 million block jump. And when scaled down to small biomes, my island was even bigger, a 9.51. This record was completely insane, and everyone knew that the current records were going to be very hard to beat. The large biomes record was beaten the very next day. December 5th, my 152.1 million record had no idea it was about to get wiped off the map. When I checked my PC for results, I saw a number beginning with 16. This was ridiculous. The biggest size jump ever, immediately followed by another huge 10 million block jump? This island was 163.4 million blocks squared, and was totally absurd for its time. If you had told me from 2024 that at the end of the next year we would have 160 million block islands, I would have fainted. Not only was this a huge jump, but it was a 10 million equivalent for small biomes. Would the 10 million barrier, long thought to be completely out of reach, be broken soon? 4 days later, December 9th, Meox finds a new record for small biomes. Was it at 10 million? Had the final order of magnitude finally been reached? Sadly, no. It was a 9.89, a record by a comfortable margin, but just barely short of 10 million. We were oh so close. We all knew it was coming at some point. It was just a matter of time, right? December passed, then January. By the end of February, we were all getting concerned. So many searchers, and yet no new records. Were we finally hitting a limit again? Not quite. On the very last day of the month, February 28th, a newcomer to the search, Glowing Gavin, would be our savior. He had done it, a 10.07 million block island. Everyone was awestruck, the 10 million barrier broken. How much higher could it get? Again though, we entered a bit of a slow period. March came and went, but in early April, a new programmer became active in the Large Mushroom Islands channel in the Minecraft at Home Discord. This was Lithadora, a skilled programmer who had taken an interest in Commission. While Lithadora was tinkering with the inner workings of the program, another skilled programmer in Seedfinder, Estradying, had an interesting project of her own. You see, climate noise doesn't stop at the world border. It, and biome generation as a whole, keep going. Due to the way octaves loop, at very, very long distances, the entirety of the continentalness noise map loops. The largest area you can search without it looping is called the continentalness tile, and Estradying was curious about whether searches across the whole thing would be realistic. Since looping and tiling of the smaller octaves are such a big part of the efficiency of Commission 1.1, she decided to extend it all the way out to the end of the continentalness tile, which, for large biomes, is over 300 million blocks away from the center of the world. The results were pretty immediate. A cursory run on my CPU had yielded a 10.02 million island for small biomes. That would be second place, but it was far outside the world border. It could easily be seen on a seed map, but viewing it in-game required a mod to remove the world border and extend the playable area of the game. Part of Estradying's new program, called Shroom Unbounded, was a size check on only the 0A and 0B octaves, filling the area and seeing if it's a valid candidate for further testing. Lithadora saw this and had a spark of genius, taking Estradying's flood fill technology and plunging it into Commission 1.1 as another filter. This led to the release of Commission 1.2, released on April 27th and claimed to be about 6 times faster than 1.1. Lithadora's first run of the program on the very next day, April 28th, found 2 new small biomes records, a 10.13 by a small margin, and a 10.89 by a very not small margin. The floodgates were opened for new records once more, but this wouldn't be the only shake-up to the meta of Mushroom Island seed finding that day. I had been running a search for out-of-bounds islands for large biomes, and on April 28th, I found a 164.3 million island that was over 170 million blocks away from spawn. Nobody was really sure what to do with this. It was technically a new large biomes record, beating out my old 163.4, but what was the use of it if it was 170 million blocks away and 140 million away from being accessed in vanilla? In the end, we decided to add two new categories to the spreadsheet we had been maintaining: USB and ULB, for unbounded small biomes and unbounded large biomes. These would hold all of the records that were outside the world border, and that 164.3 million on April 28th was the first record in the new unbounded large biomes category. What followed after the advent of unbounded searches in Commission 1.2 was nothing short of the biggest activity and record boom ever seen, fueled by many new and old seed finders searching with several new versions of the program. On April 29th, I found another unbounded large biomes record at 173.3 million blocks, further cementing unbounded categories as a competitive search field. Just a day later, on April 30th, Braden, a longtime searcher, got his first small biomes record, a 10.97, ever so close to that 11 million block barrier. On May 7th, Braden broke that barrier with an 11.16 million. That very day, Zenith found a new large biomes record at 169.1 million blocks, beating my old 163.4 million that had stood for over 4 months. The next day, Zion6118, a newcomer to the search, found a 171.0 million for large biomes, which, unfortunately, took out Zenith's shiny new record after only 1 day. On May 13th, the same seed finder, Zions, broke the ULB record with a 173.9. Then, the next day, May 14th, he found an 11.51 unbounded small biomes, the first record in that category, now holding records in 3 out of the 4 categories after only searching for a week. Then, just a day later, on a 3-day streak now, Zions yet again broke a record with a 177.5 unbounded large biomes. This newcomer to the search seemed nearly unstoppable. On May 17th, someone finally took back the reins, and Zenith struck back with a 176.8 million, besting Zions and setting a record that still stands today for large biomes. The very same day, however, Zions would fire off yet another record he was getting finds at. On May 29th, Zions6118 released 1.3Z, a fork of 1.3C that he had been using, which was purportedly much faster and worked for unbounded small and unbounded large biomes. A precursor to this was what he had been using to find so many records, with several improvements to filters and throughput putting him over the edge. This explained everything, confirming that something was indeed up with his finds and that he didn't just have the fastest 4070 in the West. Now that Zions' superweapon was in the hands of the public, the floodgates were truly open, and things only get crazier from here. On May 30th, Glowing Gavin, the seed finder to break the 10 million block barrier, comes back and finds an 11.37 for small biomes, barely taking the record from Zions, and in the same breath, he finds a staggering 12.0 for unbounded small biomes, breaking the 12 million block barrier for unbounded searches. On June 1st, Zions released 1.3.1Z, claiming yet more improvements. The next day, June 2nd, Gavin uses the new 1.3.1Z to find an 11.53 million, yet another small biomes improvement. A day later, on June 3rd, Zions came in with 1.3.2Z, and his efforts to make blindingly fast improvements to the program were not going unnoticed. Once again, just a day later, on June 4th, Arch, another longtime contributor to the project, finally got his first small biomes record, an 11.82 million. After having compiled a list of 13,000 7 million islands back in the Commission 1.0 days, Arch definitely deserved the record he had finally claimed. That same day, I found a new unbounded large biomes record at 186.7, barely squeezing past Zions and only beating him by 600,000 blocks, one of the smallest unbounded large biomes record increases ever. On June 6th, 1.3.3Z was released with yet more speed increases, and on that day, I blew past the 190 million barrier with a 195.2 for ULB. There are very few records in this list that carry as much weight as this next one. Giroux's 5.41 million back in the earliest days of the search, Andrew's insane jump through the 8 and 9 million barriers, and my record-breaking 152.1 with a jump of over 20 million blocks had all been leading up to this. While looking at my results from June 7th, I found a 196.5 in my output. A new record, but I was used to it. After all, just that last 7 days had yielded 4 new records, so I wasn't too excited. I jotted down the seed and coordinates in the spreadsheet and sent a command to our trusty mushroom bot, the final size checker, for a perfectly accurate count to put in the sheet. As it was running, I jokingly replied to the progress message, saying it needed to hurry up and that I had a message to send showing off the find to the main Siege channel of the server. Not even 5 seconds after that joking message was sent, the bot completed its calculation, and everyone who had been eager in the 200 million block barrier and nearly hitting a